Cave diving is an inherently risky sport, and over the years it has led to many tragedies. Divers sometimes become lost or run low on oxygen, but there are instances where decisions made in the heat of the moment lead them into deadly situations. Today's stories focus on those wrong decisions, from the tragedy that occurred in the depths of Tank Cave to the incident involving an uncertified diver. These choices were certainly ones they should never have made. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Tank Cave. Lucas Major and his friend Matt Parker were professional divers, their expertise evident in every calculated move as they navigated the intricate passages of the Tank Cave. Everything had gone perfectly. They were just moments away from completing the dive and celebrating another successful expedition. But then, in a split second, one wrong decision turned the adventure into a deadly trap. Both divers were excited as they planned their diving adventure at Tank Cave, located at Mount Gambier in South Australia. It is one of the most popular spots for cave diving. The cave's name originates from a water tank that once sat atop the cave's entrance. With over 7 kilometers of mapped passages, it is one of the longest underwater caves in Australia. The cave features a maze-like system, with fixed lines guiding divers through the passages. Lucas Major was just 16 years old when he faced a life-changing tragedy. He lost his best friend in a cave diving accident. This painful experience pushed him to take action. Instead of avoiding caves, he signed up for a cave diving course to learn how to explore safely. With each lesson, he grew more confident, picking up important skills like navigation. Later on, during his college years, he became friends with his roommate, Matt Parker, who also shared the same passion. And this is what brought them towards the Tank Cave. On dive day, these two divers carefully mapped out their plan, eager to explore the dark depths of the stunning cave system. Tank Cave's entrance is on private property, and it is closely monitored by the Cave Divers Association of Australia. To enter, divers must ascend a short ladder to reach the underground entrance. Inside, they find a complex network of passages that twist and turn like a spider web. Lucas Major was always eager to explore new paths. In his previous dives with Matt Parker, he often pushed deeper into the depths, seeking out the thrill of uncharted areas. Now, in contrast, Parker preferred to avoid unnecessary risks, favoring a more cautious approach. With this excitement, they started planning their next dive into the Tank Cave. They decided to dive at around 8 a.m., planning not to go below 100 feet as they weren't prepared with the necessary equipment for a deeper dive. When scuba divers intend to dive to depths of 100 feet or deeper, it is essential to be equipped with a tank that has a blend of oxygen, nitrogen, and helium. This helps mitigate the effects of narcosis during the dive. They began to dive deeper, and they suddenly saw a small opening ahead. Lucas hesitated, feeling unsure about the tight space. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, while Matt tried to swim through, but he soon found it hard to get past the narrow passage. Lucas saw his friend struggle, and he took a deep breath, shaking off his fear. With focused effort, he reached his arms forward, and with one final push, he squeezed through the opening and popped out on the other side. As Lucas and Matt went deeper into the cave, the darkness surrounded them, so they turned on their extra flashlights. The light showed the cave's beautiful shapes, and Lucas, being more focused, led the way. Suddenly, they found a narrow passage that could only be explored with side-mounted tanks. This meant that they might have to take off one of their tanks to get through, making the dive harder than they expected. Not giving up, they moved forward, carefully navigating the soft walls and ceiling of the passage. However, as they exhaled, bits of the fragile structure fell down around them, quickly making it impossible to see anything. Even though it was tough, Lucas and Matt kept going, trusting their skills to help them through. Well, as they went further ahead, the passage opened into a vast underwater chamber that was deeper than they had anticipated. Matt quickly remembered their plan to stay within 100 feet, so he checked the depth gauge, a device that many divers rely on to check their exact depth and avoid going too far. At this point, they were already close to 100 feet, and Matt tried to signal Lucas, but he was so amazed by the beautiful view that he didn't notice the signal. As he was quietly looking around, Matt tapped him on the shoulder and signaled him that it was time to go. As they prepared to ascend, Lucas's gaze fell upon a narrow passageway, and he felt an urge to explore it. Without hesitation, he gestured to Matt, indicating his desire to dive into the passage. However, Matt's expression turned stern, and he shook his head firmly. He pointed to their planned dive depth, which was clearly displayed on his wrist-mounted dive computer, and then he made a series of hand gestures to emphasize the importance of sticking to the original plan. Well, the two divers were in a tense situation now as they exchanged urgent hand signals, their eyes filled with disagreement. Lucas was eager to explore the unknown passageway, ignoring Matt's strong warnings. Matt was firm in his stance, aware of the dangers that could arise from changing their dive plan. With a deep breath, he reluctantly headed toward the only exit, which led to the side mount diving area. Well, as Matt surfaced from the water, he quickly looked around for Lucas, but his friend was nowhere to be seen. For a moment, he thought that Lucas might be behind him, so he waited a while, in a panic. Suddenly, he looked at the time and he realized that nearly 40 minutes had passed since they had last communicated underwater. The dive plan had been clear. They would ascend together. Well, with each passing second, worry tightened its grip on him. For a moment, he thought that he should dive back down to search for Lucas, but he was also worried for his own safety. Matt alerted the authorities, explaining the situation and the disappearance of Lucas. Rescue divers were dispatched immediately, but as the minutes ticked by, Matt felt an urge to take action now. He couldn't just sit and wait. Remembering that they had brought an extra gas tank, he went back to their truck. He attached the new oxygen tank and he got ready to dive back into the cave. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him. He needed to find Lucas. As he prepared to re-enter the water, he mentally reviewed the dive plan and the last known location of Lucas. Despite the risks, Matt's resolve strengthened. He would not abandon his friend. With a deep breath, he plunged back into the depths, focused on finding Lucas. Matt dove back into the water feeling both hopeful and scared. At first, he thought he would quickly find Lucas. But as he swam deeper, that hope started to fade. The underwater world felt strange and lonely. He kept going, determined to reach the last place that he had seen his friend. When he got to the narrow passageway, he suddenly froze. There was Lucas, stuck between the sharp rocks. Matt's heart sank as he realized how serious the situation was. Lucas was trapped, his body caught awkwardly, half in the passage and half out. He felt regret to leave Lucas behind when he saw that he had been struggling to get free for a long time. Time was running out, and he was gasping for air. Matt needed to act fast to help him escape from the tight space before it was too late. Matt tried to use all his strength and skills to save his friend. Matt tried to pull Lucas free from the narrow passage, but it was no use. Lucas was barely conscious, making it hard for Matt to pull him out. Matt realized that he couldn't do this alone, so with a heavy heart, Matt made the tough decision to return to the surface. Leaving Lucas behind filled him with guilt and uncertainty. As Matt came out to the surface, he was relieved to see a rescue team of 3 divers waiting for him. He quickly briefed them on Lucas's location and condition, trying to convey the urgency of the situation. Matt asked to accompany the team back down, but they gently advised him to wait. They could see the distress and panic etched on his face, and they knew that he needed to compose himself. If he dove back into the water, he risked facing narcosis due to his oxygen running out more quickly under such emotional stress. The divers understood that his mental state could impair his judgment and ability to function underwater, making the situation even more dangerous. Well, the rescue team descended to the location where Lucas was stuck, and their faces fell as they assessed the situation. Unfortunately, it was too late. Lucas had already taken his last breath. The team's focus shifted from rescue to recovery, and they worked carefully to free Lucas's body from the tight space. One of the smaller divers carefully entered the narrow passage and removed Lucas's side mount, passing it to the other divers. They worked in tandem, using the mount to help pull Lucas's body back into the section he was originally coming from. It was a painstaking process requiring precision and patience. After 45 minutes of intense effort, the team finally managed to extract Lucas's body from the tight space. As they brought Lucas's body back to the surface, Matt felt grief. But he knew that they had all done everything they could to save his friend. This tragedy showed just how dangerous cave diving can be, even for skilled divers. Lucas and Matt's story reminds us that while exploring underwater caves is exciting, safety must always come first. It is crucial to stick to dive plans, know your limits, and have the right training and gear for every dive. Now moving on to story 2. Something similar to Lucas happened to another diver, Mark Fisher, in one of the darkest of caves. He was a 24-year-old man who loved cave diving. However, he wasn't a certified cave diver. He only held an open water diving certificate, which allowed him to dive in the ocean to a certain depth. Mark often dived with his best friend, Dave Lucas. Together, they enjoyed capturing stunning photos of sea life and breathtaking underwater scenes that they discovered. Mark and Dave wanted to dive into the Shortgill Cave. Located in Barbandale, it is a fascinating cave system that offers a unique cave formation. The cave is approximately 549 meters long and 21 meters deep, with an elevation of 253 meters. Now, open water diving, like the type that Mark was certified for, takes place in well-lit open areas with minimal obstacles. The water is typically calm, and the diver can easily ascend to the surface if needed. In contrast, cave diving occurs in dark, confined spaces with limited visibility and narrow passages. The water is often murky, and the risk of getting lost or trapped is high. Cave diving demands specialized training, equipment, and experience. Divers must be able to navigate through tight spaces, manage their air supply, and deal with the psychological challenges of diving in complete darkness. Well, despite being aware of the dangers, Mark still decided to dive into the Shortgill Cave, which ultimately proved to be a mistake. Mark Fisher and his best friend Dave Lucas arrived at the dive site, excited for their underwater adventure. They carefully put on their scuba gear, making sure that they had everything they needed for the dive. Both of them wore a mask and fins, and attached regulators to their tanks so they could breathe the compressed air inside. To see in the dark cave, they used dive lights attached to their helmets. These lights were essential because the cave could be very dark. They also brought dive computers to keep track of how deep they were and how long they had been underwater, helping them stay safe. Knowing that cave diving can be risky, Mark and Dave also carried a line and reel to mark their path through the underwater passages. This would help them find their way back to the entrance and avoid getting lost. Before they entered the water, Mark and Dave took a moment to go over their dive plan and study the map of Shortgill Cave. They decided to dive to a certain depth and then split up to take photographs of the cave's beautiful features. To ensure that they would stay safe, they agreed to meet at a specific point exactly 25 minutes after starting their photography. At 8:35 a.m., the two friends began their dive, carefully following the guidelines set earlier to avoid any danger. The excitement bubbled within them as they submerged. Dave chose to swim east, eager to capture the stunning rock formations, while Mark ventured west to explore different areas of the cave. Both were thrilled about their underwater adventure, knowing that they would reunite after their photography session. As the time to reunite approached, Mark spotted a sump, a fascinating underwater feature commonly found in caves. These areas often hold unique geological formations and intriguing ecosystems, making them irresistible to explorers. Well, overcome by curiosity, Mark thought that it would be a quick second to explore this intriguing site before heading to the rendezvous point. Enthralled by the sights around him, he lost track of time, captivated by the cave's hidden wonders. Meanwhile, at the designated meeting spot, Dave arrived right on time, but he was surprised to find Mark missing. A wave of concern washed over him as he waited a few minutes, hoping that his friend would appear. With every passing second, Dave's worry grew. He decided to check his dive computer, which showed that Mark still had a few minutes of air left. Deep down in the cave, Mark was trying to navigate the unexplored sump, but he found himself wedged in the tight passage. The excitement and curiosity that had driven him to explore this area now turned to panic as he realized that he was stuck. Frantically, he tried to free himself, but his efforts only seemed to make things worse. The more he struggled, the more he became entangled in the narrow passage. Mark's mind was filled with regret and what-ifs. He thought about how he could have simply informed Dave about his discovery and then had him assist in exploring the sump. But now he was alone and trapped. As he checked his air supply, he realized that he had exceeded the 1/3 reserve mark, a critical safety threshold. In his desperate attempt to escape, Mark kicked up silt and sediment, reducing visibility to almost zero. The darkness and disorientation only added to his growing anxiety. He was now in a state of full-blown panic, his heart racing and his breathing rapid. The situation was spiraling out of control, and Mark knew that he needed to calm down and think clearly if he wanted to escape. But for now, he was trapped, alone, and running out of time. Mark realized that he was losing visibility rapidly. In a moment of desperation, he made the difficult decision to let go of the guideline that had been his lifeline. This was a perilous move. Without the guideline, he risked becoming disoriented and potentially heading deeper into the cave's treacherous passages. The thought of getting lost in the dark depths was terrifying, but he felt that he had no other choice if he wanted to escape. Being trapped in low visibility with a low air supply is one of the most haunting scenarios a diver can face. Mark could feel the pressure of his situation weighing heavily on him as he continued to struggle against the tight confines of the sump. He was now operating on only 1/3 of his air reserve, a critical threshold that heightened his anxiety. Each frantic movement drained his energy, and he could feel himself growing weaker with every passing moment. He began to assess his surroundings, trying to recall the layout of the sump and the direction of the entrance. The darkness was suffocating, but he knew that panicking would only worsen his situation. Meanwhile, on the surface, Dave kept waiting. But when he saw no signs of Mark, he quickly alerted the Shortgill Cave authorities, and a rescue team was immediately assembled. The team came into action, but their efforts were hindered by the same zero visibility conditions that had forced Dave to retreat. The rescue team was left with no choice but to wait for the silt to settle, their anxiety growing with each passing minute. The hours ticked by at a glacial pace as the rescue team waited for the water to clear. Finally, after 6 agonizing hours, the conditions improved enough for them to proceed. With a mix of hope and trepidation, the team made their way back to the sump where Mark was last seen. As they approached the area, their worst fears were confirmed. Mark was still wedged in the narrow passage, his body now lifeless and motionless. The rescue team realized that Mark had run out of air, his fate sealed by the cave's treacherous depths. The rescue team carefully extracted Mark's body from the sump. Dave saw Mark's lifeless body and immediately regretted his decision to go into the cave. Mark's death, much like Lucas's, serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of cave diving, especially for those who lack the necessary training. His tragic fate underscores the importance of adhering to safety protocols, understanding limits, and respecting the inherent risks of the sport. In both stories, a moment's decision became a diver's downfall. These tragic losses highlight that no amount of experience or passion should outweigh the importance of safety. As thrilling as cave diving can be, the lessons learned from these tragedies are clear. Always dive within your certification, know your limits, and stick to your plan.